Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters possesses a tremendous amount of wisdom, especially if you learn to read and appreciate the fictional way in which he weaves the narrative. Joining me to have a conversation about his book on the Screwtape Letters is Dr. Andrew Swafford, Wiser Than Serpents, Unveiling the Truth of Sin and Sanctity with C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. And Andy is no stranger to this program. He is a professor at Benedictine College, and he's also a speaker and Catholic theologian. Andy, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Oh, great to be with you, Marcus. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's been a while, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right, tomorrow. So, the Screwtape Letters, I think in some ways, some people might argue it's one of the harder reads of Lewis, and but then for some people, that particular style of writing is extremely appealing. Can you explain what the challenge is in approaching the Screwtape Letters?
Yeah, so I've been using the Screwtape Letters and the Great Divorce, and also missionary with my students at Benedictine College for a while now, probably going on 10 plus years. And some students find the Screwtape Letters dark and they kind of depressing a bit. Some of them just absolutely love it. I like to pair that one with the Great Divorce because it's almost kind of a Paschal movement of going from the temptation to the Great Divorce. Is really a fantastic book on heaven. What I love maybe the most about the Screwtape Letters is it shows us that from the vantage point of angels and demons, the little things matter. Mm-hmm. The little things are really where the game is won and lost. Those little kind of compromises and lack of conversion that we have, and this isn't to scare us, but I think it does open our eyes that there's more than meets the eye. And sin is often kind of an acquiescence of kind of taking the path of least resistance, and that comes out in the book.
Why the aversion to recognize that there is so much more than meets the eyes? It's a de fide part of the Christian faith.
Yeah, no, it really is, and and the book covers the whole gamut of human experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether it's dealing with friends that are not, are more secular minded, and the question of evangelization, prayer, and are sometimes, kind of hesitancy and resistance to pray, especially when we're not doing so well. We don't really want to come face to face with our Lord, and that's really exactly what we need. But we're kind of resistant to that when we kind of know we're not doing so well, and it's. Yeah, so it just suffering and all kinds of things show up in this fictional man. In the background of the story is you have this uncle demon writing to a nephew demon. And the nephew demon is almost like the diabolical counterpart to a guardian angel who's sort of assigned to seduce this human patient. And and obviously it's fiction, but it teaches us a lot. And I guess one little anecdote. Wojtyła, John Paul II, when he was with his the college students he reached out to, and then they continued to meet and gather as they aged. And in one of their kayaking trips, they actually took along and discussed the Screwtape Letters. It's this is the great Wojtyła thought this fit to discuss with his the youth who had grown up, and he continued to Wojtyła from 49 till he became Pope. He would see this group regularly every year for a 2-week kayaking trip, and so that's kind of a little fun fact that they discussed on one of those trips, the Screwtape Letters.
Share with us the kind of spiritual vein, if you will, in this exchange between uncle and nephew, and of course the central character being the human person who never actually says a word in the entire narrative. What's the core spiritual message that's trying to be put forth here?
Well, I think one way in, and this comes out in letters 8 and 9, and it's very Ignatian in the sense of, so basically the guy's feeling down, and the nephew demon's rejoicing, and the uncle's like, hey, well, be careful, because this is not necessarily, he calls it the trough, the low point spiritually, is not necessarily on your side. It has to be properly exploited. And he goes on to say, it's a good time for sensual temptations because, when a man's spiritual energies are high, he's more able to resist those. And so it's a good time for that. But even better, he says, the best way to attack him is by the human being's own thoughts about this spiritual dry state. And it basically, what's introduced is what they call the law of undulation. The spiritual life goes up and down, and that's the normal course of things. So his first thing is never let him suspect that there is such a law. Make him think that his low point is permanent, and that his previously high point was supposed to be permanent. And basically, he'll start to kind of see his previous conversion as kind of like a phase from which he is kind of withdrawing. And what kind of comes out of this for Lewis is if we, and this is very Ignatian, if we recognize that spiritual highs and lows is par for the course, that's normal, then we know that in a low point, this is a season, and it's normal, and it won't last forever. I think when our imagination takes hold of it and says, this is going to last forever, it causes us to forget our previous conversion, to explain it away, and to, again, fail to realize that this too will pass. But the moment, again, for Ignatius, St. Ignatius of Loyola, the kind of goal for spiritual life is to kind of have a spiritual even keel. In our high points, we need to prepare for future low points because we know they will come. And in our low points, and really in our high points, we need to think about what temptations will I have when I hit a spiritual low, and kind of prepare ahead of time. And then our low points, to recognize it for what it is, as a season, as a period. That could be an hour, it could be a day, it could be a few months, it could be longer, right? But to recognize it for a season, and as Ignatius puts it, to believe that consolation will return soon. And the moment we believe that, the chains of desolation start to break. And so, for this reason, in the back of the book, I have a little appendix where I kind of just summarize St. Ignatius' 14 rules for overcoming desolation, because I just see it just fits hand in glove. So that's just maybe one, but that kind of thing shows up again and again, that our emotions are important, but they are by their nature changeable and fickle. And so the law of undulation is basically that the closest we can come to an eternal constancy as created embodied persons is kind of this up and down, and to kind of recognize that for what it is and learn to weather those storms so that we get better than, in Ignatius' words, at overcoming desolation, so it no longer has its power, its tyranny over us.
As you rightly have noted, one of the ways in which you go through this text is by means of this Ignatian framework. And so when you're looking at first letter 3 and then letters 8 and 9, you highlight how, even from the get-go, there's this temptation towards despair, which seems to be one of the driving forces of the works of the demons.
Yeah, letter 3, I love that one. It uses the phrase domestic hatred, and it's part about the tension between the human being, the man, and his mother. And he's had this new conversion. And a lot of these things, like, gosh, we've all been there, and he's kind of looking down upon his mother because, his mother hasn't had the same conversion, and he just doesn't have much mercy or pity for her, and she's kind of frail, and he just kind of there's kind of an over-spiritualization that comes upon the man, where he's kind of, his mother is like this because she hasn't converted. And there's no sense of sympathy of, well, part of why she's like this is because she has this really bad rheumatism, and she's frail, and she's in pain. And so it's causing the man to overlook the little things. And I think in our piety, we can say our prayers, do our devotions, but then what if we're just nasty to the people right in front of us? And this is what the demon wants. And so you get these great phrases like domestic hatred, where the way he describes it is, well, it's where when you take this double standard, you take the other person's words in the most oversensitive way possible, so you're offended, and you expect that your words need to be taken merely at face value. Mm-hmm. So he's like, all I said was, what time is dinner? And basically he has this line, and then both people walk away, basically angry and taking offense that offense was taken. And it's like, man, this just captures the dysfunction that can so easily beset a family, siblings, parents, spouses that live in close quarters. And once again, like, the little things matter.
And these little things are what effectively add up into the way in which we live our spiritual life. And so, as Lewis himself will highlight in the Screwtape Letters, even things like your posture in prayer, if you're tricked into believing that it matters nothing, then, well, you eventually treat your prayer as if it matters nothing. I'm talking with Dr. Andrew Swafford. We're going to continue on the other side of the break. We're talking about spiritual insights from C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. This is his newest book from Ave Maria Press, Wiser Than Serpents, Unveiling the Truth of Sin and Sanctity with C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm talking with Dr. Andy Swafford. He's a professor of theology at Benedictine College, author, speaker. And we're talking about his newest book from Ave Maria Press, Wiser Than Serpents, Unveiling the Truth of Sin and Sanctity with C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. In your book, one of the things you highlight is Weddell's 5 thresholds of conversion. Can you please share with us, Andy, what's Weddell trying to posit here, but also, by virtue of that, what are the 5 thresholds?
Yeah, no, they are so helpful. If I could just throw one thing back to our previous conversation about kind of the family relations, we're not going to be perfect. There's going to be rupture. In my experience, the key is repair, like real, honest repair, repentance, asking for forgiveness, saying I'm sorry. That to me is the key to everything. So we're not going to be perfect, but do we have, the honesty to make real repair? Well, I love these because I think, and I bring it up because the man has met these secular friends, and Lewis has some just great lines where basically the man is converted. He's not at ease with the conversation with these secular friends, but he, kind of goes along and kind of hides his faith. And he has this line, Lewis has a line where, the man was silent when he ought to speak. And basically, laughed when he should have been silent. And, it's that kind of nervous laughter when you kind of go along with something that you're not really comfortable with, but you don't know how to engage, and he's kind of being fake, basically. And I think it's so easy to kind of fall into that. And what I think, happens is with evangelization can be so intimidating because I think we think of it so all or nothing. I'm going to try to make this person a daily communicant, and then they fall on my face, and I'm like, I just won't do anything. It's just too hard. What Weddell gives us in these 5 thresholds, in her research, basically, that if someone becomes like Baptist and becomes Catholic, or goes from agnostic to, a Christian, or agnostic to Catholic, they tend to go through these 5 stages. And what I like about them is it helps us to think incrementally, more modestly about evangelizing, and it gives us a little bit more confidence to do it. So number 1 is trust, where you have some kind of positive association with the faith. Maybe you got a Christian friend. Maybe you went to a Christian school. Maybe you remember a Christian play or a Christian song from Christmas time around. Just some kind of positive association. So that's the very first stage. And it's like if that's not there, try to build trust. If it's there, try to kind of shore it up. The second stage is curiosity, and this is where the person was kind of intrigued by Jesus. But Weddell's got some great lines. One of them that always stuck with me. She said, "Don't drown a teaspoonful of curiosity with a gallon of answers." Because sometimes there's people that in our families or what have you that we've just been dying to have these conversations with for 6 months or 6 years, and it finally comes up and we just kind of vomit what we've been wanting to say for so long, and that just almost never goes well. One of my maxims I bring up in the book is, it's kind of counterintuitive, but to tell myself I'll get another chance. And I say that to myself even if I'm on an airplane and I'll never see this person again. But the reason is because it kind of curbs my temptation to kind of overdo it. Because sometimes, like, just a well-placed line that person can sit with and let them chew on can be more effective than just kind of barraging them with all kinds of facts, if that makes sense. It's easy to overestimate their curiosity. So trust and curiosity. Number 3 is openness. And this is where that person is really sincerely open to changing their life. And, for those of us who've had conversions, let's not forget how scary that was. Like this moment, it's like, if I go all in, a lot of things in my life will have to change. And one thing Weddell brings out is that you really can't go through this stage and onto the 4th stage unless you believe that a personal relationship with God is possible. And I think this is really important because I think sometimes when we evangelize, we can get, too trapped up in our apologetics and ideas, which are important, absolutely. But, where would they ever come to believe in a personal relationship with God if we never share ours with them? And I think the apologist in us is often afraid to be that vulnerable, to talk about our personal walk with the Lord, because we want to come across like rational and logical. And I get it, I've totally been there. But I think we need to speak also to what the Lord has done in our lives personally, because if we don't, how is this person ever going to see this reality and think it's possible for them? So you go from trust, curiosity, openness, and number 4 is seeking, and that's where the person becomes more active, and they're actually seeking and searching out the truth. And then the 5th one is to become an intentional disciple. And what it really proposes that you need to at some point ask the person, are you ready to give your entire life over to Jesus? Are you ready to accept his marriage proposal? And that yes really is what brings that person to that intentional disciple stage. And if they're hesitant, it's like, well, that why not? Like, what's left? What still needs to be converted? Again, what I like about these 5 thresholds, and I go through them in the book, is that it just enables us to think incrementally. And I think if we think more modestly about evangelization, we'll do it more often because it's less intimidating.
Why the temptation to think of things in a more grandiose perspective?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, we think about sharing the faith, and I don't know. It's so much in life is built with consistency in the little things. That's how you build a Roman Empire or what have you. And at least in my experience, these would have been very helpful, at various stages when I didn't know about them. Because I just think we get intimidated, we clam up, or I don't know. But by thinking in terms of what threshold is this person in? How can I take them from one level to the next? Is just far less intimidating.
I agree. I genuinely agree. And the longer I do this work, the more I realize how crucial it is to master how to do that and do that well. So from there, then, you take us through conversations pertaining to joy and sarcasm, and how even those have true spiritual bearing, according to the wisdom of Lewis. And of course they do.
Yeah, Lewis says this one of the letters is about the causes of laughter. And, it's joy is the first, and basically in descending order, the bottom 2 are more on the demon side, and the first 2 are not. And joy is the first one, and I love how Lewis puts it. He's like, you can see this when people gather for a holiday, and the very smallest witticism produces this immense laughter, and you realize the laughter is not caused by how funny the comment was, but the warmth and the intimacy between the people. And I like to joke with my male students. Well, how do you know if a girl likes you? Well, if she laughs at your jokes, right? Tongue in cheek. But there's something true about that when people love each other, it doesn't take much to provoke laughter. So joy. The next one is fun. And it's, the demon's you might think that the enemy being God, doesn't like this because it might distract them from more important things. But basically that fun, again, promotes community and communion and, kind of leads to joy and friendship and fellowship. And that's on God's side, not the demons. The third one is the joke proper. And there's some, really insightful things here because he says, well, on the one hand, you got vulgar jokes. And he's like, that's on the demonic side. But, what's even better than that is the way in which if something can get passed off as humorous, all kinds of behavior gets a pass. And I've seen this. It's like stuff that you would never accept, but if it gets passed off as funny, it somehow it gets a pass. So the all excusing nature of humor on the demon side, and then the fourth one though, he calls flippancy, and this in the little paragraph there, it's the kind of thing that we all kind of know it when we see it, but it's kind of hard to define. At one point he says, only a clever human can tell a real joke, but anybody can talk as if virtue were funny.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this cynical. It reminds me a lot in Love and Responsibility. John Paul II, then care of which he talks about resentment when he discusses chastity, and he compares it to sloth or achadia. And he says, achadia or sloth in the tradition is a sadness at the difficulty of the good, but resentment denies the goodness of the good. Resentment is like making fun of chastity as stupid, and it exculpates us from even trying because, why would I try? It's so dumb. That's really what this flippancy is. And the Screwtape, the Uncle Demon, goes on to say, this is the finest armor plating I know of to keep someone from the enemy's camp being God. And man, that kind of cynical spirit, I've seen that is toxic and poisonous, and it's hard for God to enter into that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and just to deviate slightly from your book, but I think it still pertains to the wisdom you're trying to put forth, that Lewis is trying to put forth. It's, in this digital era especially, tremendously easy to give into a development of particular siloed cynicism, especially if there are certain voices that we ascribe to and constantly listen to. I invite you to speak to that.
I think you're so right. I'm here at the Applied Biblical Studies conference in Steubenville with Dr. Hahn and different people. I just gave a talk, and I really asked the audience to think about what things give them peace. And it's important to be informed. I totally get it. But, if it makes me more angry, more on edge, more afraid, more, we get so worked up about things that are sort of out there that it can lead us to become quite nasty to people right in front of us. And man, that is the devil's playground right there. Again, it's important to be informed. I get it. But so much of that out there, we can just kind of curate things for ourselves to kind of, like you said, keep us siloed. But get us angry, get us afraid, get us anxious. Like, that is not the fruit of the Spirit. I just kind of really share with the audience here. Stay close to Jesus in the Eucharist, right? I mean, whether it's ecclesial politics or this and that we're working about, like, we trust Jesus. So I think it's sort of like you can't love everyone if you don't love the people right in your midst, and you can't pray at all times if you don't pray sincerely at specific times. I think that's the antidote, whereas it's so easy to kind of fill our quiet time with that darn phone. And I'm not anti-phone, but we have to really balance that out with, in my opinion, I think quiet prayer, listen for the voice of God, and really pay attention to, knowing the tree by its fruits. Like, where is this leading me? Is it, if I were to think from the vantage point of demons or angels, is this good for me?
And therein lies the issue. Oh, the time always flies when I'm talking with you, Andy. And we barely got through halfway in your book. Thank you so much for penning this book. I greatly appreciate it.
No, it's so good to be with you, Dr. Peters, Marcus. Man, thanks for all you do. God bless you.
I guess it's been Dr. Andy Swafford. He's a friend. I'm looking forward to seeing him in person again tomorrow. And we're talking about his new book, Wiser Than Serpents, Unveiling the Truth of Sin and Sanctity, with C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.